搿搭是平凉路通北路啊，阿拉一路看过来，文化用品商店、惠民钟表店啊，搿搭，哎呀呀呀呀，搿搭地方阿拉所有的老百姓啊，看到真个要落眼泪水啊。
As one of the most prosperous metropolises in China and the commercial and financial hub, the situation in Shanghai is largely indicative of the broader Chinese economy. Despite the Chinese government repeatedly boasting about a swift economic recovery, the reality presents a different picture. Even in a first-tier city like Shanghai, many long-established businesses have closed down, and major shopping malls have become eerily deserted, creating a dismal atmosphere.
青浦练堂正店社区，以前是人挤人，现在冷清的真的吓人啊。
This is a video of Big North Road in Panyu of Guangzhou, where you can see many storefronts have closed down. According to the person recording the video, this place used to be bustling, with most shops selling clothes or shoes. But now they're all closed, making the entire street eerily quiet. Dongguan in Guangdong Province, home to a significant number of electronics, clothing, and toy processing factories, is a manufacturing base in China. Now, due to the withdrawal of foreign capital and lack of export orders, many factories have closed, and there are advertisements for factory rentals everywhere. Even Hong Kong is feeling the chill from the mainland's economic downturn. Many salespeople have noticed that the number of mainland tourists have significantly decreased, and they no longer shop as they did before. Despite their best sales efforts, it's becoming increasingly difficult to get visitors to make a purchase. A recent video gone viral of a Beijing train station is rather sobering. At 3 a.m., with a temperature of 17 degrees, many people were lying at the entrance of the station, on the roadside, and on the stairs. Some were lucky enough to have a blanket to lie on, while others had to lie directly on the ground. According to the person who recorded the video, they were not long-term vagrants, but homeless workers. This is a large freight market in Chengdu, Sichuan province, where you can see a large number of trucks parked here. It is said that due to the economic downturn, the freight market in Chengdu has collapsed, and these large trucks have been parked here for several days. One truck driver said,
国家经济好不好呀？
If you want to know how good the national economy is, just ask a truck driver. He shared that in the past, they didn't have to wait for goods. They could quickly load up and set off. But now, it takes 2 to 3 days to fill a truck. After the boom of the barbecue skewers business during the Labor Day holiday in Zibo of Shandong province, the demand has dropped significantly, returning to normal. Many who followed the trend and invested in the barbecue skewers businesses suffered severe losses. Due to the boom of the Zibo barbecue, street food stalls sprung up all over China. This newly built barbecue food plaza in Kunshan City, Jiangsu province, was converted from the former Foxconn dormitory area. Kunshan is the main base of Taiwanese enterprises, with over 5,000 Taiwanese companies, accounting for 70% of the total exports in Kunshan. This has allowed Kunshan to remain in the top 100 counties in the country for 18 consecutive years. However, it is said that now, including big factories like Foxconn, over a third of Taiwanese companies have moved to Southeast Asia, India, and other places. This left many workers' dormitories vacant, so the local government converted them into a barbecue food plaza. But with the people gone due to factory relocations, the place lacks vibrancy, making it difficult for any business to thrive. Recently, the National Bureau of Statistics of China released a new set of economic data, once again hinting at the chill descending on the Chinese economy. On May 31st, the Chinese Communist Party officially released the Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index, or PMI, for May, which was 48.8%, further slipping from April's 49.2%. This data has remained below the prosperity line of 50% for 2 consecutive months, indicating a decline in the level of manufacturing prosperity. The Logistics Performance Index, or LPI, in China for May was 51.5%, also falling by 2.3 percentage points from the previous month. Logistics reflects the vitality of the macroeconomy, therefore changes in the macroeconomy can be observed through the LPI. Meanwhile, China's service industry activity slowed down in May. Although it remained in the expansion zone, it fell from 56.4% in the previous month to 54.5%. Despite a consumer peak during the long May Day holiday in May, where authorities claimed that the number of tourists reached 240 million, it was still lower than April. This suggests that the service industry, which was previously touted by officials as a fast-recovering sector and an important industry driving the economic rebound, is also losing momentum. On May 27th, the National Bureau of Statistics released another set of data that startled observers. The profits of industrial enterprises above a designated size nationwide fell by 20.6% from January to April 2023. Moreover, regardless of state-owned enterprises, foreign and Hong Kong, Macao and Taiwan invested enterprises, or private enterprises, profits all fell sharply, with declines exceeding 16%. Among them, private enterprises, which contribute to 90% of new employment, experienced the highest drop in profit, reaching 22.5%. In addition, the youth unemployment rate reached a historical high of 20.4% in April. Although data for May has not been released, judging from the economic situation in May, the unemployment rate is expected to be even worse than in April. Also, with the continuous withdrawal of foreign capital, the widespread closure of small and medium-sized enterprises, a significant contraction in imports, the decline in industrial product factory prices, sluggish real estate investment, factory output and retail volume both lower than expected, etc., it's clear that the initial rebound following the cessation of the zero-COVID prevention policy is losing steam. In a recent video titled Economic Recovery Debunked, Chinese economic analyst Lao Man, who we've mentioned in a previous video, conducted a more detailed data analysis on the Chinese economy from several perspectives, including fixed asset investment, foreign trade, and real estate. In his summary, by April, investment in China had collapsed, exports were down, and trade surplus was shrinking. The real estate bubble had burst, and there was a widespread default on local debt. In his words, I have never seen such a spectacle where multiple organs are failing at the same time. In April 2023, China's fixed asset investment amounted to 4.02 trillion yuan, a decrease of 10% from 5.41 trillion yuan in March, and a sharp drop of 17.4% compared to 4.87 trillion yuan in the same period in 2022. It's worth noting that cities such as Shanghai were locked down in April of 2022, which had already lowered the baseline. Despite the absence of any adverse investment factors in April this year, investments were still dwindling. Fixed asset investment includes both government and private investments. In April 2023, private fixed asset investment was 2.1 trillion yuan, compared to 3.04 trillion yuan in the same period last year, a decrease of a staggering 30.9%. The significant drop in private investment mainly stems from a lack of confidence in the future among entrepreneurs. The foreign trade situation is also in a serious state. Although the Chinese Communist government is touting the situation as highly favorable, data from different official departments are contradictory. According to customs data, from January to April this year, the trade surplus was $294.2 billion, an increase of 38.2% year-on-year, enough to make the little pinks cheer. Little pinks is a Chinese internet term referring to ardent supporters of the Chinese Communist Party. However, the Foreign Exchange Administration, another official department, presented a significantly different picture. The trade surplus from January to April was only $159.2 billion, $135 billion less than the customs figures. According to the Foreign Exchange Administration, the trade surplus also decreased year-on-year, falling from an actual surplus of $187.2 billion last year to the $159.2 billion this year, a decrease of 15% or $28 billion. What's the difference between these two calculation methods? The Customs Department calculates based on the declared data of foreign trade companies, while the Foreign Exchange Administration refers to the data of foreign trade companies that have settled their foreign exchange. After comparing the two data, it was found that from 2009 to 2020, the Foreign Exchange Administration's figures were consistently higher than customs data because a lot of hot money entered China under the guise of foreign trade. From 2021 to the present, the data from the Foreign Exchange Administration has been significantly lower than customs data, and the discrepancy rate has been increasing, reaching a staggering 45.9% from January to April this year. This data trend indicates a substantial outflow of funds, and despite official claims that foreign trade is doing well, money hasn't flowed into China. This is a crucial piece of data because its downward trend corroborates the data provided by another Chinese government department responsible for export statistics, the National Bureau of Statistics. Their statistics show that exports shrank by 11.4% from January to April, which aligns with previous reports of foreign trade industry bosses lamenting the lack of orders. Therefore, by digging into the data from the Foreign Exchange Administration and the National Bureau of Statistics, a truth is unveiled. China's actual exports are declining this year, and there are suspicions of data falsification in the Chinese government's customs data. The authorities' frequent talk of stabilizing foreign trade and expectations is primarily reliant on messaging from the Customs Department and the Propaganda Department, as well as cracking down on fake information on the internet by the Cyberspace Administration, creating an illusion of prosperity. Lao Man also analyzed the data from China's real estate industry, reaching the conclusion that while the total property area exchanged in March this year amounted to 148.13 million square meters, similar to the same period in 2021, it dropped dramatically to 76.9 million square meters in April, a monthly decrease of 48%, almost cut in half. In May, data from various large intermediary agencies suggested that property transactions were continuing to fall, with a decline of approximately 20%. The steep decline in real estate sales led to a series of defaults by real estate companies, in addition to the unbearable burden on local government fiscal revenue. From January to April this year, revenue from land sales fell 21.3%. This triggered a wave of defaults on urban investment bonds issued by local governments, especially the non-standard bonds. 73 cases of default occurred between January and April, with 50 of them happening in April alone. More shockingly, a significant news story emerged from the Kunming Urban Investment Company. Experts from Yunnan province stated that the province was no longer able to repay its urban investment bonds and needed support from the central government in Shanghai. Some public servants in Kunming had not been paid for several months. The Kunming government not only misappropriated previously issued special bonds to repay debts, but also used citizens' social security funds to service debt. In summary, China's current situation is characterized by a sharp contraction in investment and a significant decline in exports between January and April. The trade surplus has dropped significantly, and the real estate market has officially collapsed. There are large-scale defaults on local debts. Therefore, Lao Man believes that China's economic data for April is already exhibiting multiple organ failures. If the central government does not introduce appropriate policies to respond, a major economic depression could ensue. In early May, Sun Liping, a professor at Tsinghua University known as Xi Jinping's doctoral thesis supervisor, issued a warning that after the massive debt, a prolonged economic downturn might follow. Sun Liping drew a comparison between China and Japan's long-lasting recession, which continued for 20 to 30 years. He believed that Japan's decline was not due to the so-called Plaza Accord on exchange rates with the US in the 1980s, but rather because the debt of Japanese businesses and individuals was too high, which led to the bursting of the bubble in 1995. Subsequently, Japanese businesses and households spent their main income on repaying debt for 15 consecutive years. The result was a balance sheet recession throughout the country. A balance sheet recession, in simple terms, is a scenario where individuals halt their consumption, scale back their debts, and businesses are hindered from making investments. This leads to a decrease in personal buying power, ultimately driving the economy into a downturn. The situation in Japan at that time was strikingly similar to the predicament China is facing now. But a bigger issue is that people have lost confidence in the future. A few days ago, a well-known Chinese investor, Wu Shichun, went viral for his stand-up comedy routine in which he commented on the difficulties in the Chinese economy. He noted that it's tough for investors to invest and obtain finance, and things are also difficult for entrepreneurs. Despite being busy with various endeavors, people are not making money. This stand-up routine resonated with investors and entrepreneurs because it accurately depicted China's current situation. So, how can we resolve the current predicament? Lao Man is quite pessimistic. On May 31st, he stated, "Up until this moment, I have not seen the authorities put forth any recuperative measures. On the contrary, the decision makers are still applying desperate measures in a last-ditch effort. The economic depression is already visibly apparent, even without data to substantiate it. The data for May will be gradually released by mid-June. At that time, we can see to what extent the situation has worsened. At this point, the role of data is no longer to argue that a recession is coming, but to show how far we have already fallen into the abyss." Recently, the China News Weekly published a piece on proposals for China's economic development, which stirred widespread attention and controversy. The article discusses how China's economy, facing encirclement by Western countries led by the United States and the stalling of its external trade engine, is forced to shift its development path. It has to rely on the internal circulation model, which is dependent on the consumption power of its domestic population, to stimulate its economic development. However, this is not realistic in practice, as currently over 80% of those on ordinary income do not have sufficient capital to stimulate domestic demand. Data from the National Bureau of Statistics show that more than 72% of individuals spend their wages on real estate purchases or related investments. The majority of people are strapped by home and car loans, with no spare money to stimulate consumption. Many also lack confidence in the future economy and prefer to save their money rather than invest or spend it. Manufacturing, which employs a large number of urban and rural migrant workers, is facing relocations and closures, resulting in a substantial increase in unemployment. These unemployed individuals struggle to just make ends meet, let alone having the capacity to consume. Even for the high-income wealthy groups, when they do spend, they often choose to shop overseas. This trend is evident in the recent increase in entry and exit numbers at several major Chinese customs. Therefore, to promote internal circulation, the prerequisite is to allow the majority of ordinary people to have money to consume. But the current situation is not only expensive home loans and car loans. Chinese people also need to save for medical, pension, and education expenses. So, without solving these problems, the push for internal circulation is just empty talk. In fact, the Chinese economy is already critically ill, and long-term factors such as rapid population aging, a swift decline in birth rate, and other structural problems, as well as the hostile international environment created by the CCP, all exacerbate China's economic downturn. The Chinese Communist Party, an authoritarian regime, is willing to jeopardize the economy in order to maintain its ruling position. Many analysts urge Western investors not to harbor illusions about the recovery of the Chinese economy, nor to fantasize that the CCP can change. The faster this regime falls, the sooner the people of China and the world at large can truly benefit from China's economic development.